At the moment, the Branchysled has been deployed at one of our deepest sampling sites, so 4,700 meters depth. And very little is known about the animals that live at this depth around the coast of Australia. So this is going to be one of the first times to actually see what types of small animals are living within the sediments in the abyss off Australia. The Branchy's on its way. Everyone's excited. We're ready for it. The Branchysled is basically a massive steel-framed sled that's dragged across the seabed, and within the frame of the Branchysled there are two nets, and so as the Branchysled moves along, it suspends loads of sediment from the seabed, and there are lots of tiny animals that are also living in that sediment, and they get caught by the Branchysled as it moves along and funneled down through the nets into some special containers at the end of the nets called the cod ends. The Branchysled has now been secured on deck by the crew. And the first stage is to wash the nets down from the outside in case there are any animals trapped inside the nets. Yeah, this is the end of the net which goes on top of the sled as it's on the seafloor. And then we just detach the net, and then the cod end we place into buckets. So this is the epi cod end. So this one would have been on the bottom of the sled as it was moving over the seafloor. And this one is always the one that fills up with more sediment. Because the top cod end tends to catch just the fine particles that are flying around, and they quite often get sifted out. But as you can see, there's quite a lot of sediment that's still retained in this sample, which was on the bottom. So the next stage is to tip this out into some water. Most of the sediment will also be sieved, which tends to wash out any fine particles and concentrates the animals so that you can pick them out easier. And I'm not seeing any polychaete worms yet, but to see them really is quite necessary to sieve the sediment first, and then we should be able to pick them out more easily. So we've decanted some of the sediment from the epibenthic sled cod ends into small jars with a bit of seawater, and we've also sieved it to get rid of the fine mud. And now, as you can see, the liquid inside is a lot clearer. And the next stage is to look through this sediment for small animals that might be amongst the sediment particles. And it's good to do that under a microscope because they can be really small, so you might miss them if you're just looking at the sand. The invertebrate processing team has been processing for about an hour and a half now, and these are just 3 of the families that we've found so far. So one of them is called Polynoidae, and these polychaete worms are characterized by having a series of scales along their backs, and lots of the ones we've been finding have these really big spines along their body, probably to prevent them from being eaten by other animals. We've also found a bamboo worm. So these are polychaetes which have really long body segments that makes them resemble bamboo, and an amphoretid worm. And all of the ones we've been finding here have been quite big and also quite green in colour.